It was the happiest day of her life, until he slapped her in front of hundreds of guests, right there in the middle of their wedding. No one expected it. Not her, not the guests, and certainly not him. But what she did next, it shocked everyone. Let me know when you're ready for the next act, and we'll build on this explosive beginning. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Before we dive into the story, I've got to ask you this. What would you do if someone humiliated you on the biggest day of your life? Drop a comment and let's talk. And if you believe strength is built from the hardest moments, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me take you to a wedding you'll never forget. It was a sunny Saturday in Charleston, South Carolina, the kind of day where everything seemed perfect. The flowers in the garden bloomed in shades of lavender and white, the kind of day that made you believe in fairy tales. The venue was breathtaking. A grand estate with marble floors and chandeliers that sparkled in the afternoon light. Guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos were already seated, waiting for the moment that would make all their whispers stop. Today was supposed to be her day. Maya had dreamed of this wedding for years. She had carefully planned every detail, from the lace on her dress to the way the reception hall would glow under the candlelight. She was marrying Alexander Stone, the billionaire CEO who had swept her off her feet just a year ago. They met in New York at a charity gala, and from that first conversation, Maya had felt like she was the only woman in the room. Alexander was tall, confident, and successful in a way that was both intimidating and alluring. But Maya wasn't blind. She knew the life she was stepping into wasn't going to be easy. As a black woman marrying a man with so much power, there were whispers, there always were. But today, none of that mattered. She was about to marry the man she loved, a man who had promised her the world. The guests were all there and everything was set. The music began to play, and Maya stood at the top of the aisle, her heart racing as she caught sight of Alexander waiting for her. His smile was as wide as it had been when they first met. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she stepped forward, the soft fabric of her white dress sweeping the floor. Maya knew this day would be emotional, but she never imagined it would be the beginning of her worst nightmare. The air smelled sweet with jasmine and roses, but Maya felt a weight on her chest. The pressure of the day, the people staring, the expectations was overwhelming, but she didn't let it show. She smiled at the guests, waved at a few familiar faces, and moved toward the man she was about to marry. And then it happened. Just as she was about to stand beside him at the altar, a sharp sound cut through the music. A loud slap echoed through the hall. Everyone froze. Maya's world tilted. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a joke. Her husband-to-be had just slapped her, right in front of everyone. What could possibly have pushed Alexander to do this? And how would Maya respond? The room went silent. The guests, who had been eagerly waiting for the ceremony to begin, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The moment hung in the air like a bad dream, but Maya didn't move. She just stood there, staring at the man who had just humiliated her. Alexander's eyes were wide, almost as if he couldn't believe what he had just done. His hand was still raised in the air, his knuckles white. His expression was a mixture of confusion and anger. But the shock on his face only lasted a moment before he quickly tried to recover. He reached out to Maya, but she took a step back, her body tense. "Maya, I didn't mean to," he stammered, his voice low. But Maya didn't give him the chance to finish. She could have screamed. She could have run. But instead, she did something that no one saw coming. What was her next move? Maya took a deep breath, standing tall. She looked straight into Alexander's eyes, not with fear, but with something else, something fierce. The guests were still frozen, unsure of what to do or say. And then Maya did the unexpected. She didn't run. She didn't break down. Instead, with a slow, deliberate motion, she raised her hand. And in front of everyone, in the very moment where she was supposed to be the bride, Maya slapped Alexander back. The sound was louder than his had been. The shock on the guests' faces was palpable. The entire room gasped. The slap wasn't just a retaliation, it was a declaration. A declaration that Maya wasn't going to let anyone define her. Not even the man she was supposed to marry. Maya stepped back, her eyes never leaving his. The energy in the room had shifted from confusion to tension. She didn't care that there were hundreds of people watching. She didn't care that her wedding day had just turned into a scene that no one would forget. The only thing she cared about was that she had taken control. "You don't get to do this," Maya said, her voice steady, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not now, not ever." Her words hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud, and for a moment, no one moved. Maya's wedding was over before it even began. But her story? It was just getting started. The air in the room felt suffocating. The guests sat frozen, unsure of what to do next. Some couldn't believe what had just happened. Others whispered in disbelief, but all eyes were on Maya. Alexander stood there, still in shock, his hand hovering in the air. He opened his mouth, trying to form words, but nothing came out. His face was flushed red, his body rigid. He had never expected this. The woman he'd been so careful to impress, the woman he was about to marry, had just slapped him back in front of everyone. Maya didn't wait for him to speak. She wasn't interested in his apology or excuses. Her eyes, sharp and full of fire, held his gaze, and her voice was steady as she spoke. "You don't get to control me, Alexander," she said, her tone firm. "Not now. Not ever. I don't care who you think you are." Was this the end of their relationship? Or was Maya about to show Alexander just how far she was willing to go for her dignity? The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. No one moved. No one breathed. Alexander, the billionaire who always had control over every situation, stood in front of her, vulnerable, confused. The woman he had thought he could dominate, manipulate, was standing her ground. He took a step forward, then another. Maya didn't budge. She wasn't afraid of him, and in that moment, she felt like she had just shed the last piece of herself that had once needed his approval. "You don't know what you're doing," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Maya took a slow, deliberate breath, her heart still racing, but her mind clear. This wasn't just about what had happened here today. It was about everything that had led to this moment. The subtle control he had exerted over her, the way he had used his wealth and status to make her feel small, the way he had gaslight her into thinking she wasn't enough. This wasn't just about one slap. It was about years of manipulation. She stood tall, meeting his gaze with strength she hadn't even known she had. "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm done." Was this the moment Maya would finally break free? Would she walk away? Or would she give him one last chance to prove himself? Maya turned on her heel, ignoring the stunned silence around her. She walked toward the exit, her mind spinning. She could hear the whispers of the guests behind her, but she didn't care. She could feel the weight of their eyes, but that no longer mattered either. She had never been a woman who backed down. Not when she knew she deserved better, not when she knew her worth. She reached the door, her hand gripping the handle. And before she stepped out, she paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Alexander was still standing there, his hand slowly dropping to his side. He looked like a man who had lost everything in a single moment. But Maya knew this wasn't about his loss. It was about her reclaiming everything she had given up in this relationship. "I'm leaving, Alexander," she said, her voice clear, "and you'll never control me again." With that, she stepped outside into the warmth of the late afternoon sun. The weight of the world lifted from her shoulders. Was this truly the end of Maya's relationship with Alexander? Or was this just the beginning of her fight to take back control of her life? The world outside was bright, but Maya's mind was still dark. The slap was just a symptom of the toxicity that had always been present. She hadn't even made it past the driveway when her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Alexander. "Please come back, Maya. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I love you." Her heart twisted, not with love, but with a deep sense of loss. She had once believed his words, believed in the future they had talked about together. But now Now it all felt like a lie. She deleted the message without replying, letting the phone fall into her purse. Maya had spent so many years trying to fit into his world, trying to meet his expectations. Now she was taking control and there was no going back. What would Maya do next? Could she truly leave behind the life she had built with Alexander? Or would she find herself trapped again by his promises? Maya didn't go home. Instead, she walked to a nearby park. The familiar path under her feet felt grounding, the trees offering shelter from the harsh world she had just left behind. As she sat on a bench, she took a deep breath, the air smelling fresh and new, like the start of something she had been waiting for. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from her best friend, Camille. Maya let it ring, her mind still processing the whirlwind of emotions that had just torn through her. She wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. But then, a moment of clarity hit her. She had to talk to Camille. She needed someone who truly understood her, someone who would remind her of the woman she had been before all of this. The woman who had never let anyone push her around. The woman who had built a life on her own terms, without relying on anyone else. Maya's world had shattered in front of her at the altar, but as she sat in that quiet park, she realized she was no longer the same woman who had walked into that wedding. She was stronger, but would it be enough? Maya sat in the park for hours, her thoughts racing. The cool breeze brushed her face, and the distant hum of cars on the street was oddly soothing. But no matter how much she tried to relax, her mind wouldn't stop turning. She had just walked out on her wedding. The one thing she had been planning for months, a dream she had built up in her mind, had come crashing down in a single, humiliating moment. Alexander's slap, his confusion, the way he tried to apologize as if nothing had happened. It was like a slap to her dignity. And yet, as much as she hated to admit it, a part of her still longed for the life they had planned together. A life of luxury, excitement, and the promise of endless possibilities. But she couldn't ignore what had just happened. Could she go back to the man who had just humiliated her, or was she strong enough to truly walk away? That night, as Maya stood in her apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but feel lost. She had everything she could have ever wanted. She was engaged to a billionaire. She had a beautiful apartment in downtown New York. She had friends who envied her lifestyle. But what did all of that mean if she had to sacrifice her dignity? The truth hit her like a cold wave. She had let herself be controlled. She had let Alexander control her every move, and when she tried to take a step forward, he pushed her back. She had tried so hard to fit into his world. But at what cost? She thought about the way she had looked at him earlier when she slapped him back. There had been no fear in her eyes, just strength. Strength she hadn't known she had until that moment. But now, as the anger began to subside, the doubt crept in. Could she really move on from Alexander, or was she trapped in the life he had built for her? Maya picked up her phone, staring at the messages from Alexander that had been piling up all evening. "I'm sorry," they said. "Please come back." Some were short, others longer, but the one constant was his desperation. She could feel the weight of his guilt through the screen, and part of her softened. She had loved him once. The man he had been before the power, before the arrogance. The man who had shown her a glimpse of a life she never thought was possible. But was that enough? Was love enough when trust had been broken so badly? She tossed the phone aside, turning away from the reflection in the glass. The last thing she needed right now was to let him pull her back into the same cycle. He'd always used his wealth and status as a tool to control people. And he had almost succeeded in doing the same to her. She wasn't that person anymore. She couldn't be. Maya knew she had to stay away. She had to figure out who she was without him, without the life he had promised her. But even as she told herself that, her mind couldn't stop wondering, was this really over? Or had she just made the biggest mistake of her life? Was Maya making a huge mistake by walking away? Or was this the fresh start she desperately needed? The next day, her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. Alexander. Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to answer. She couldn't. But she found herself picking up anyway. "Hello," Her voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. "Please, Maya, I need to see you," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. I don't know what came over me. It's just, I was so scared. I don't want to lose you." Maya closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She hadn't expected him to apologize. Part of her had hoped he would, but she hadn't expected him to sound so broken. "I don't know if I can do this, Alexander," she said softly. "You hurt me, in front of everyone. I can't just forget that." "I know," he replied, his voice cracking, "and I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making it up to you. Please, Maya, don't let this be the end." Maya wanted to believe him. A small part of her did. She had once imagined spending her life with him, but now those dreams felt like a distant memory. She wasn't the same person anymore. "I need time," she whispered. "Time to figure things out." "I understand," he said, the sadness evident in his tone. "But please don't shut me out. We can fix this, Maya. I know we can." Maya hung up the phone, her mind in turmoil. The weight of his words hung heavy on her heart. But Maya couldn't help wondering, was he telling the truth, or was he just trying to pull her back into the life he controlled? She walked to the window and stared out at the skyline, the lights of the city twinkling below her. She had everything she thought she ever wanted. A successful career, a future with a man who could give her the world. But none of it felt real anymore. All she had now were questions. What was her next move? Would she give Alexander a second chance? Or would she walk away for good? The uncertainty was overwhelming. But deep down, Maya knew she had to choose. She couldn't stay in the middle forever. Maya hadn't expected to hear from Alexander again so soon. But when the knock on her apartment door came just 2 days after their phone call, she knew it was him. She stood there for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She had told herself she needed time. She had told herself that she needed to figure things out, away from his control, away from the promises and the lies. But now, standing on the other side of the door, was the man who had broken her trust, the man who had slapped her in front of everyone, and here he was trying to make things right. Against her better judgment, Maya opened the door. Alexander stood there, looking completely different from the man she had walked away from at the wedding. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and he had a tired look in his eyes. His expression was softer now, not filled with arrogance or control, but with something deeper, something she hadn't expected to see. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Maya hesitated for a moment. Part of her wanted to slam the door and tell him to leave. But the other part, the part that still cared, the part that remembered their good times, hesitated. "Why are you here, Alexander?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "I can't stand knowing that you're out there, away from me without any explanation," he said, his words spilling out. "You said you needed time. I understand that. But we need to talk about what happened. I need to make it right." Could Maya really let him back in? Or was she walking into a trap again? Maya thought about what he said. Time. She needed time. But what if time didn't change anything? What if all it did was make her question her own worth even more? The last few days had been quiet. Maya had taken a break from her busy work life, spending time alone, away from the noise of the world. She had thought things through, sat in silence, and tried to listen to what her heart was telling her. And her heart was torn. She didn't want to admit it, but a part of her wanted to believe that Alexander could change. She wanted to believe that he could become the man he had once seemed to be, the man who had promised her a life of love, adventure, and respect. But another part of her, the stronger part, knew that nothing could fix what he had done. And yet, as she looked at him now, standing there with an almost vulnerable look in his eyes, she felt the walls inside her begin to crack. She wasn't ready to let him in again. Not yet. But maybe they could talk. Maybe she could finally get the closure she needed. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. What did Maya need to hear to truly move on? And would Alexander be able to give her the answers she was searching for? Once he was inside, the space between them felt too small. Maya was used to being independent, used to having control over her own life, her own decisions. But now, with him in her apartment, everything felt different. His presence felt overwhelming, suffocating even. She wasn't sure if it was the weight of the past few days, or if it was something else. But she could feel the tension in the air, thick and unspoken. Alexander didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he paced slowly around the room, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "I know I screwed up," he said quietly. "But you have to believe me when I say I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared, Maya." "Scared?" Maya echoed, her heart racing. "Scared of what?" "Scared of losing you," he said, stopping his pacing and looking at her with a mixture of frustration and regret. "I thought I could control everything. I thought that if I pushed, if I took control, you would stay. But I was wrong." Maya couldn't hold back her response. "You think that's love? Control? Manipulation?" "I didn't see it like that," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought I could keep you safe in my world. But I can see now that I pushed you too far. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Was this really an apology? Or was Alexander just trying to manipulate her again? Maya sat down on the couch, crossing her arms. She needed to process everything he was saying. She couldn't just react on instinct. She needed to listen, to understand, before making any decisions. "I don't know what you want from me, Alexander," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You want me to forgive you? You want me to forget that you slapped me in front of everyone? Forget the way you tried to control my life? You want me to believe that you didn't mean it?" "I know I messed up," he repeated, his voice full of pain. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I'll prove it to you, Maya. I'll change. I don't want to lose you." There it was again, the plea, the desperation. And Maya had to admit, part of her wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel that love again. She wanted to believe that people could change, that people could grow. But there was another part of her, the part that had seen the way he treated her, the way he had used his power over her, that knew the truth. She wasn't ready to let her guard down again. "I'm not ready for this, Alexander," Maya said, standing up and walking toward the door. "I need space. I need time to figure out who I am without you. And I don't think you understand that yet. You want things to go back to how they were. But I'm not that woman anymore. I can't be." Was Maya making the right choice? Or was she walking away from the one man who could change everything? Maya opened the door and gestured for him to leave. Alexander stood there, looking at her with a mixture of longing and guilt. He didn't move for a moment, his eyes searching her face for something, anything, that would tell him that she was still the woman he had fallen in love with. But Maya wasn't that woman anymore. And for the first time in a long time, she felt proud of herself for it. As Alexander left, Maya knew that the hardest part wasn't the slap or the wedding disaster. The hardest part was moving on, letting go of the life she had built and the man she had loved. Maya couldn't remember the last time she had felt so lost. It had been a week since Alexander had left her apartment, and in that time, she had done everything she could to push him from her mind. She kept herself busy, work, friends, long walks through Central Park, but no matter how much she tried, his face kept creeping into her thoughts. There were moments when she thought she'd made the right choice. Walking away from him had felt empowering, almost like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd lost along the way. But then there were the other moments, the quiet moments, when the apartment felt too big, too empty, and the weight of it all hit her. Maya had loved him. She couldn't deny that. She had loved everything about him, his intelligence, his ambition, the way he looked at her like she was the most important thing in the world. It had been intoxicating being wanted like that. But now it was hard to remember the man who had once made her feel special. All she could see was the man who had humiliated her, the man who had slapped her, the man who had tried to control her every move. Was her love for Alexander enough to make her forgive him? Or had he destroyed everything they once had? She sat at her desk at work, the hum of the office a steady backdrop to the chaos inside her head. The phone rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. She reached for it, half expecting it to be him. It wasn't. Instead, it was her best friend, Jessica. "Maya, how are you holding up?" Jessica's voice was soft, concerned. Maya closed her eyes, leaning back in her chair. "I'm okay," she said, trying to sound convincing. "Really? I'm fine." "You don't sound fine," Jessica said. "I know you don't want to talk about it, but I can hear it in your voice. What's going on?" Maya bit her lip. She hadn't spoken to anyone about what happened since the wedding day. She didn't want to seem weak. She didn't want anyone to pity her. But maybe it was time to admit the truth, even if it was just to Jessica. "I don't know if I made the right choice," Maya admitted. "I feel conflicted. One part of me is glad I walked away, but another part of me feels like I'm losing him for good. And I don't know if I'm ready for that." There was a long pause on the other end. "Maya, you're stronger than this. You're strong enough to walk away. You deserve someone who treats you with respect, not someone who thinks they can control you." Maya could hear the sincerity in Jessica's voice, but the doubt still lingered in her heart. She wanted to believe what Jessica was saying. She wanted to be the woman who walked away for good, who didn't let a man define her. But deep down, she wondered if that was even possible. Was she really strong enough to walk away? Or was the pull of the past too strong for her to resist? That night, as Maya lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, she thought about the man she had fallen in love with. Alexander had his flaws, sure, but he had been there for her in ways no one else had. He had listened to her, cared for her, made her feel like she mattered. But somewhere along the way, he had crossed a line, one she couldn't ignore. And yet, as much as she tried to move on, part of her still missed him. It was in those quiet moments, when the world outside her apartment was still, that the memories came flooding back. She remembered their first date, how he had laughed at her jokes, how he had looked at her with such intensity. She remembered the way he had held her, the way he had promised her the world. It all felt so perfect, until it wasn't. Could the man she had once loved truly change? Or was this all just an illusion she had created? The next morning, Maya was sitting at a cafe on the corner of 6th Avenue, sipping her coffee and watching the world pass by. It was a Saturday, and the streets were alive with people coming and going. She had become a regular at this cafe, the kind of place where people left you alone, where you could blend into the background with your thoughts. As she checked her phone, her heart skipped a beat. There was a message from Alexander. "I can't stop thinking about you, Maya. I miss you. Can we talk?" Her first instinct was to delete it, to block him, to move on. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. She stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, her thumb hovering over the screen. What was she supposed to do now? Was this just another manipulation? Or was it a sign that he had truly changed? Her hand shook as she typed a response. "I don't know if I'm ready for that, Alexander." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The phone buzzed almost immediately. He was quick to reply. "I understand, but I need you to know that I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm not the man I was. Please, Maya." Maya felt a pang of emotion in her chest, but she pushed it aside. She had to stay strong. She couldn't let him back into her life so easily. But as the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready to let him go. Maybe there was still hope for them. But then again, maybe there wasn't. Was Maya just holding on to a fantasy? Or was this really the chance she had been waiting for? The next morning, she ran into Alexander again. It wasn't planned, and it definitely wasn't expected. She had gone to the local farmer's market to pick up fresh fruit for the week, trying to escape her spiraling thoughts. But there he was, standing across the street, leaning against a car, his arms folded, watching her. For a moment, she froze. Her heart raced, and the world around her seemed to slow down. She could hear the sounds of the market, the chatter of the vendors, the bustle of the crowd, but all she could focus on was Alexander's gaze locked onto hers. "Can we talk?" he asked, walking over to her slowly. "Please, Maya, just one last time." Maya wanted to walk away. She wanted to keep walking, to leave him behind once and for all. But as he stood there, waiting for her response, the weight of her emotions took over. She couldn't deny that the man she had once loved was still standing in front of her. And no matter how much she wanted to move on, she still had questions. Was this the moment that would change everything? Or would it be the final nail in the coffin of their relationship? Maya stood there in the middle of the bustling farmer's market, feeling like the world was spinning too fast. Alexander was just a few steps away, his gaze fixed on her, as if waiting for her to make a decision, an impossible decision. The sounds of chatter and distant music were a blur. All she could hear was the thudding of her own heart. "Why are you here?" Maya asked, her voice tight, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I couldn't stay away," he said, his voice quiet but filled with raw honesty. "Maya, I know I messed up. I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but I need you to know that I regret everything. I'm not the man I was. I'm trying to change. I need you to believe me." Maya took a step back, her hands instinctively clutching the straps of her purse. She had been here before, sitting across from him, hearing the same promises, feeling the same pull. It was like they were stuck in an endless loop, and this time, she didn't know if she could get out. "Why should I believe you?" Maya's voice cracked, the anger and hurt finally spilling out. "You slapped me, Alexander. You humiliated me in front of everyone. How do you expect me to just forget that? To just move on?" Could Maya finally walk away? Or was she too caught up in the hope that he could change? He looked down, his face contorting with guilt. "I know," he said, shaking his head slowly, "and I'll never be able to undo that. But I'm asking you to see who I am now, not the man who hurt you. I can't change the past, but I'm trying to change for the future. For us." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. His words were so familiar, so convincing. This was the man she had fallen in love with, the man who could be so charming, so sincere. But it wasn't enough anymore. She had heard the promises before, felt the regret before. She had given him chances, only to have him betray her again. "You say you're changing, but how do I know this time is different?" Maya asked, the anger in her voice barely contained. "How do I know you won't hurt me again?" Alexander's eyes softened. "Because I know now what I've lost, and I'm not willing to lose you again." Was he really sorry? Or was this just another manipulative attempt to win her back? Maya took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. Her heart wanted to believe him, but her mind was still reeling from everything that had happened. She couldn't just erase the last few months. The slap, the way he'd controlled her, the lies, they weren't things she could just move past. But in the silence between them, there was something new, something raw, a vulnerability in Alexander that she hadn't seen before. The man standing before her wasn't the same man who had slapped her at their wedding. He wasn't the same man who had made her feel small and insignificant. Or at least that's what he was trying to show her. "Maybe you're right," she said, her voice trembling. "Maybe you're trying to change. But I can't keep going back and forth, Alexander. I can't live in this cycle with you anymore. I'm not going to let you hurt me again." He took a step forward, his hand reaching out, but Maya stepped back, shaking her head. "No, no more." Was this really the end? Or was there still hope for them to find their way back to each other? Alexander's face fell. For a moment he just stood there, his hands still outstretched, his eyes pleading. The hurt in his expression was unmistakable, but it wasn't enough to change Maya's mind. She couldn't keep living like this. She couldn't keep hoping for a different version of him when the man standing before her now was still the same person who had hurt her so deeply. "I need you to leave," she said, her voice firm. He didn't argue. Instead, he nodded slowly, stepping back. "I understand," he said quietly. "I don't deserve you, but I'll keep fighting for you, Maya. I promise." Maya didn't respond. She couldn't. She just stood there, watching as he turned and walked away, his figure disappearing into the crowd. Had Maya finally let go? Or was this just another chapter in their never-ending story? As she watched him walk away, something shifted inside her. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt at peace. It was the kind of peace that came with making a hard decision. The kind of peace that came from letting go of someone who had once meant everything to her. She had tried, she had hoped, but now it was time to move on. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Alexander. She didn't need to look at it. The answer was already inside her. Maya had loved him. She had truly loved him. But sometimes, love wasn't enough. Not when it was built on lies and manipulation. Not when it hurt more than it healed. She deleted the message without a second thought. Was Maya truly ready to move on? Or would the memories of her past love keep pulling her back? Maya woke up the next morning to the soft sound of rain against her window. It wasn't a loud storm, just a gentle drizzle that seemed to match the heavy feeling in her chest. She had spent the night thinking about Alexander. His words, his look, the way he had tried to reach for her. But even as the rain tapped against the glass, she knew she had made the right choice. She had to keep telling herself that. Her mind kept returning to what he had said when he left the market. His promise that he would keep fighting for her. She could still see the hurt in his eyes, but there was no way she could go back to that. There was no way she could let him back into her life, not after everything that had happened. Maya stood up from her bed, pulling the covers off and stepping onto the cold floor. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and unlocked it. There were 3 new messages from him, 1 from last night, and 2 from this morning. The first was just a simple, "I miss you." The second was longer. "I know you're hurt, but please, I'm asking for one more chance. You won't regret it." The third came through just minutes ago. "Please, Maya, I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. Just give me one more chance." Maya stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. The temptation to respond was overwhelming. She could hear the voice inside her telling her it wasn't too late, that maybe she should give him one more chance. Maybe this time he'd be different. But the other part of her, the stronger part, was telling her no. She had done this too many times before. She couldn't keep living in a cycle of hope and heartbreak. She had to move on. Was Maya really strong enough to move forward? Or was the past too powerful to let go? She tossed her phone onto the bed and went to the bathroom. The sound of the water filling the sink drowned out her thoughts as she splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the heaviness in her chest. When she looked up in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. She was stronger now, no longer the woman who would wait for Alexander's calls, or question her own worth because of his actions. But that strength was still new. It was still fragile. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her away from her reflection. She dried her face quickly and picked it up. Another message from Alexander. This time, something different. "I know I can't take back what I did, but I won't stop trying to make it right. Please let me prove it to you. I'll be waiting for you." Maya sat down on the edge of the bed. The words stung more than she expected. It wasn't just that he was still trying. It was that he had the nerve to believe that one more apology could erase everything that had happened. Could one apology really change everything? Or was it too late for Alexander? She knew she needed to block him. She knew it deep down. She couldn't keep doing this to herself. But as her thumb hovered over the screen, something held her back. What if this was the last time he would reach out? What if he truly had changed? What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life? The doubts kept swirling, and just as quickly, Maya put the phone down. She wasn't ready for that yet. She needed time to think, to clear her head. Was Maya truly ready to let go of the love that had once been everything to her? That evening, she decided to take a walk. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a cool breeze that smelled like fresh earth. She wrapped herself in her jacket, pulling the collar up to block the chill, and headed out the door. The streets of New York City were quieter now, the rush of the day replaced by the hum of distant traffic and the sound of footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. Maya didn't know where she was going. She just needed to get away. She needed to breathe. As she walked, she found herself drifting toward Central Park. It was a place that had always calmed her, the quiet space where she could think without distractions. The park was empty this time of evening, the paths lit by street lamps casting soft shadows on the ground. She sat down on a bench, staring out at the trees, trying to make sense of everything. Was she running away from something? Or was she just taking a step back to look at the bigger picture? Could this time away help Maya see things clearly? Or was she just hiding from the truth? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She looked up to see a man walking toward her, someone familiar. Alexander. Her heart stopped. She hadn't expected to see him here. Not like this. Alexander, she started, her voice shaky. I know, Maya, he said, stopping just a few feet away. I shouldn't have come, but I couldn't stay away. Not without seeing you one more time. Maya stood up, shaking her head. You don't get it. I'm done. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep hoping for something that's never going to happen. He took a step closer, his expression desperate. I know I hurt you, but I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Maya. I can't change the past, but I want to show you that I can be the man you deserve. Just give me a chance. Maya took a deep breath, holding back the flood of emotions she had been keeping inside. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to explain herself, to make him understand. She didn't owe him that. I need to move on, Alexander, she said, her voice steady. I need to find myself again. I can't keep going in circles with you. He stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could see the hurt in his eyes. But there was also something else. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was the recognition that she had made up her mind, no matter how hard he tried. He nodded slowly. I understand. He turned to walk away, his shoulders slumped, and Maya couldn't help but feel a small pang in her chest. But this time she didn't chase after him. She didn't beg him to stay. This time she was letting go. Had Maya finally broken free? Or was this just the beginning of a new chapter she wasn't ready for? Maya woke up the next morning to a quiet apartment, the sunlight filtering through the curtains in soft rays. It was a new day. She had been so focused on the storm of her past that she hadn't realized how much peace could feel like this. The choice she'd made the night before wasn't easy, but as she walked to the kitchen, grabbing a mug from the shelf, she felt lighter. Her hands were steady as she brewed her coffee, the rich smell filling the space around her. For the first time in a long time, Maya didn't feel like she was just surviving. She was living. Could she really find peace after everything? Or was her heart still holding on to the past? After finishing her coffee, Maya decided to step outside. It was a beautiful Saturday morning, and the city was alive with the buzz of people heading out to run errands, grab coffee, or meet friends. Maya had been in this rhythm for a while now, but today, something felt different. She was moving forward. She wasn't running from anything or anyone. She put on her sneakers and walked down the street, her eyes scanning the crowd, the energy of the city wrapping around her like a warm blanket. She didn't expect it, but there was a calm inside her now that had been absent for so long. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Tasha. Brunch tomorrow? I'll pick you up at 11. You need some girl time. No excuses. Love you. Maya smiled, texting back quickly. Sounds perfect. See you then. She felt herself relaxing even more. She didn't need to answer to anyone anymore. She could simply exist, without the weight of expectations or the trauma of her past mistakes. Was Maya really ready to move on? Or was she just putting up walls to protect herself? The next day, she sat with Tasha at their favorite brunch spot, a cozy cafe near the edge of the park. The sun was bright, and the conversation flowed effortlessly as they shared stories, laughed at old memories, and discussed the drama of the week. It felt like a return to normalcy for Maya, but there was something else, something more important, that had changed within her. I can't believe you finally stood up to him, Tasha said, her voice full of pride. You really did it. You let go. Maya nodded, taking a sip of her mimosa. It wasn't easy, but I had to. I had to stop letting him define me. I needed to figure out who I was without him. Tasha smiled warmly. And how do you feel now? Maya paused, looking out the window at the busy street, watching people go by. I feel free, like I can breathe again. I think I'm finally ready for something new. Was Maya truly ready for a fresh start? Or was her heart still healing from the wounds of the past? Later that afternoon, Maya took a walk in the park. She didn't know why she had chosen to come here, but something about the open space, the trees, and the sounds of birds chirping made it easier to think clearly. She found a bench near the pond and sat down, letting the cool breeze brush against her skin. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced down, expecting another message from Tasha or someone from work. But when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was Alexander. She stared at the message for a long time before finally unlocking it. Maya, I'm not asking for you to come back. I'm just asking for you to hear me out. I'm sorry for everything, and I will always be grateful for the time we had. I hope one day you can forgive me. Please take care of yourself. Maya sat still for a moment, the words lingering in her mind. They weren't the desperate pleas he had sent before. This message was different. It wasn't about him trying to win her back. It was about him letting go. It was his way of finally acknowledging what he had lost. She let out a deep breath, the heaviness in her chest lifting just a little. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't sad either. For the first time, she could finally accept it all. The love they had, the pain he caused, and the peace she had found by letting go. Maya smiled softly to herself as she typed her reply. I've forgiven you, Alexander. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for. Take care of yourself too. She hit send, then put the phone away. It felt like closing a chapter that had dragged on for far too long. It wasn't the dramatic finale she had imagined, but maybe that's exactly what it needed to be. Quiet, peaceful, and final. Could this be the closure Maya had been searching for? Or would her heart always wonder what if? Over the next few weeks, Maya continued with her life. She focused on herself, on her work, and on rebuilding the confidence she had lost. Her mornings were hers to enjoy, her evenings, full of relaxation and time with friends. She didn't need anyone else to complete her anymore. She was whole. One evening, a few weeks later, Maya was leaving work when she ran into someone unexpectedly. It was Daniel. She hadn't seen him in months, since that awkward date they had shared. He smiled when he saw her, and she couldn't help but return it. There was something about him that made her feel at ease, something that was completely different from the past she had left behind. Hey Maya, he said, his voice warm and kind. I was hoping I'd run into you. Maya raised an eyebrow, half smiling. Were you stalking me, Daniel? He chuckled. Not exactly. I just wanted to see how you were doing. She paused, really looking at him this time, and realized that maybe she was ready to let someone else in. Maybe it was time to stop carrying the weight of her past and see what the future had in store. I'm doing really well, Maya said, her voice steady. Actually, I think I'm ready to start over. His eyes softened. I'm glad to hear that. Want to grab coffee sometime? She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. I'd like that. Maya was finally letting go. She was opening herself up to new possibilities, knowing that she was worth more than the pain she'd endured. The past was behind her. The future? It was just beginning. Do you believe that closure is possible after a broken heart? Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever found peace after letting go of someone you loved. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.